Hello and welcome. I'm your host Betz, back with another episode of Sports with Betz. Man, it's been a minute since I was able to record a podcast. I was, obviously you get busy around the holidays and the beginning of the year. Not an excuse. And then I ended up I had a sore throat and I think I lost my voice. And then ended up having like the nastiest sinus infection that I've ever had. Still kind of dealing with some congestion, but like my voice sounded completely different. So rather than annoy you guys, decided to just wait till I was healthy. And I mean, I picked a hell of a day to record again because I'll get to this here and I'll break this down in detail, in depth. But yeah, Mike Tomlin just stepped down as the head coach of the Steelers. That like literally just happened. So yeah, we got a lot to get to here, but I share this every single time. Before we get started with anything, just wanted to thank you guys for coming in and tuning in every episode. The show is growing. I'm getting more and more, reviews and listens and follows and shares every single time I record. So yeah, please keep sharing the show. If you get some value, if you learn something, if I made you laugh, if you think I'm an idiot or for something I said, whatever. If I gave you a reason to come back, please share this with the biggest football fan you know. Something else that establishes a lot of credibility because the majority of my audience is actually on Spotify. I have a very minimal presence on YouTube. I just post it on YouTube just for the people in my life who don't have Spotify accounts, which is crazy that people don't have Spotify accounts, but here we are. So on my Spotify profile, again, where the majority of my audience is, please leave a review, leave a 5-star review. I should say that. Don't be leaving me any shitty reviews. Leave me a 5-star review. I've got more reviews and more comments, more shares, more engagement than the majority of new shows have, as Spotify Wrap told me at the end of last year. So something I can do to keep building my credibility and growing the show and getting a bigger and bigger audience and more traction and more consistency is having positive reviews on Spotify. So drop your boy 5-star review on Spotify if you feel like it. If you especially care about me, share this with somebody or post it on your story or something. So, all right, enough of that. Getting into it. So Mike Tomlin, breaking news, was just, like literally within the last hour, just stepped down as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you would have asked me to guess which AFC North head coach would still be employed, during by the time we hit the playoffs or by the time we hit, early 2026, I would have never in a million years guessed it was Zach Taylor. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, you could argue Zach Taylor was on the hot seat more than any of his other rivals in the AFC North. Way more than Kevin Stefanski, more than John Harbaugh, more than Mike Tomlin. But yeah, Zach Taylor is the last man standing, king of the hill in the AFC North, and you got three head coaches that are going somewhere else. Now, that being said, Mike Tomlin, I just want to get this out of the way and address this, that I think he is super successful. I think he is, he's a leader of men. He's a CEO style head coach. He's everything you want in a head coach. But I don't think he's going to jump right back into coaching, especially with the fact that he technically stepped down. Do I think he actually stepped down? Probably not. He probably was informed by front office that they were going to move in a different direction. And out of respect to Mike Tomlin, they probably gave him the option, like, hey, do you want us to announce that we are moving on and firing you, or give you an opportunity to step down as head coach? He probably chose the I don't know, the route that made him look better and able to exit on his own terms rather. Whereas like Jim Harbaugh, I would love to know what those firings look like, especially for a guy, or not Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh. For a guy like John Harbaugh, what did that meeting look like? What did that conversation look like with the Baltimore Ravens? I'd really love to be a fly on the wall and hear that conversation. Like the way that I imagine it going is, hey, John, probably the same conversation that Mike Tomlin had in Pittsburgh. Hey, John, we're going to move in a different direction. We'll give you the option to either, step down and resign as head coach, or, we'll just fire you and we'll put that news out. And I imagine a guy like John Harbaugh saying, well, no, this is my team. This is where I want to be. I don't want to leave. This isn't my decision. It's not a mutual feeling. So they say, all right, well then our hand is forced. We've got to fire you. Whereas, yeah, Mike Tomlin might have said, all right, that's fine. I've served my purpose here. I've won a Super Bowl, had a ton of success, never had a season below 500, want to protect that, and I'm going to step down. I could see Mike Tomlin doing something in TV. I could see him doing something as like a consultant, kind of like the Mike Vrabel route after Mike Vrabel was fired in Tennessee, which is still like the most insane mistake that I've ever seen. More so than any of these other coaches we're talking about, probably. He took a year off, and he was a consultant with the Browns. I remember watching videos of him working with their offensive line and defensive line, and him putting pads on and putting, getting dummies out and rocking his guys and like getting physical, getting bloodied up by his players in practice, and just seemed like he was having fun, enjoying a fired coach salary plus plus a little bit of benefits of working with a new team and having a little bit of that pressure off you. So I could see Mike Tomlin doing something similar to that, working as a consultant or staying within the league somehow. All these other head coaches that have either been fired or, and who I'm referencing, I'm specifically referencing, Mike McDaniel, who was fired, Brian Daboll. We've even got, let me pull up my list here because I've got a whole list of guys. Some of these guys who are on the market right now, like I feel like we are going to get an insane coaching, hiring carousel here. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to start out, and I'm going to spend most of the time talking about football today. Pretty much the entire podcast is going to be about football because we got the college football national championship is next Monday, and then NFL playoffs are right in the heat of it. So we're going to focus mostly on football. This is our Christmas for football fans. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to rank the open jobs in the NFL as of right now, as of Tuesday, January 13th. I'm going to go ahead and rank all of those. And then I'm going to give some predictions, maybe not even predictions, or more so who I would love to see land in these different spots. Some of them are based off of who these teams have brought in to interview. Some of them are based off of just my own personal like fan fiction and fantasy of who would create the best storylines or who would be the funniest hires or the coolest hires. We'll get through these. So I want to go through and I want to break down. I'm going to rank these because there's 9 job openings. 9 job openings. That's over a quarter of the league. As a Titans fan, I'm so excited because we have never, ever, ever, I mean, not in my lifetime, we have never seen a coaching carousel like this, like where you just have over, 20, whatever it is, almost 30% of the league has open job availability, and the Titans are right in the center of that. So I'm really excited, but not all jobs are created equal. I'm going to go through the best opportunities and why I think those are the best opportunities. And some of them I'll spend more time on than others. So clear cut, number one, best opportunity, I believe right now, if they can retain their talent, is the Baltimore Ravens. I think it's crazy that I also think John Harbaugh is probably the number one most desirable coach in this hiring cycle right now. So you've got the Ravens fired, they fired their head coach. He becomes the number one option for every other team in the league. Meanwhile, the team that fired him is the number one option for everybody else. The reason why I say that is this is a QB-led league, and you've got Lamar Jackson, who, when healthy, is probably the best overall player in the entire NFL. He is the biggest game wrecker. He is, maybe besides Josh Allen and a healthy Patrick Mahomes, which Mahomes is, we'll see this, he could be on the back half of his career already. But besides Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson can take over a game and change the entire momentum of a game in one play or one drive, more so than any other quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he and he's looked at as like a pure dual threat or even a running quarterback. His passing numbers and accuracy, like he's putting up quarterback efficiency that we haven't seen since early mid 2000s Aaron Rodgers. So the Ravens, in my opinion, they are. This is the most important piece, probably, actually. I should have started here. They are a good organization. They have always had a history of winning. and you combine that with, multiple Super Bowls and whatnot. You combine that with, with the talent that they currently have on their roster. If I was a head coach, Baltimore would be my number one choice. Number two, on the list is going to be, surprisingly, my surprising people. I'm going to say the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, from an offensive standpoint, you've got to figure out quarterback. Michael Penix showed some promise. I wouldn't say he showed enough promise where you can fully buy in and be like, yeah, we got our guy. This is our quarterback of the future. He needs to show some improvement. And then you've also got trade capital with, you might have a team like whoever ends up being like the Indianapolis Colts for 2026 season, a team that's got a lot of pieces but might need to sign a quarterback. You could trade Kirk Cousins, you could trade Michael Penix for draft capital. But I mean, you've got Bijan Robinson, arguably the best running back in the NFL, if not the best running back, at least number two or number three. He's a top three running back in the NFL, which is rare. He can catch the ball. He can do it all. And then you've got Kyle Pitts, Kyle Pitts could be awesome. Kyle Pitts might not stay, but Kyle Pitts is phenomenal. And then you've got Drake London as a wideout who could be a clear cut, dynamic wide receiver one in the NFL. He could be maybe like the poor man's Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's awesome. He catches balls every single week where I'm like, holy shit, how does this guy do it? So offensively, if you've got a coach that can bring some stability and some discipline to the Falcons, I mean, the fact that the Falcons had one of the most loaded offensive rosters in the NFL, and their defense is not bad at all either. They had one of the most loaded offensive rosters in the NFL in easily the weakest division in the NFL, and they missed the playoffs and they were eliminated in December is crazy. Early December. I think that they were eliminated like first week of December. So you get somebody who could provide some stability and discipline and a winning culture to the Falcons. That's a ton of opportunity there. Number three, of course, I'm a homer. Of course, I'm going to be biased, but I'm going to say the Tennessee Titans. One thing you don't have to worry about with the Titans that I've talked about ad nauseum is we've got our quarterback. I mean, Cam Ward showed so much promise, and he has some of these throws, guys, where I swear maybe I should do a Cam Ward highlight breakdown so I just don't seem like I'm being completely biased, but he makes some of these throws that there are very few quarterbacks in the entire NFL who can make these throws. He's got to work on the deep ball. He's got to work on his decision making and playmaking ability. But I mean, the dude he has so much promise. So you've got Cam Ward, not a problem. And then you look at the pieces around him. They need a ton of pieces. Luckily, they've got the number 4 overall pick. They've got a decent receiver core. They need to add, one or two more pieces. They're two rookies, Alec Ayomaner and Chimere Dike. Chimere Dike, first-team All-Pro as a return specialist, and he showed promise as a wide receiver too. And Ayomaner, freaking stud. He showed a lot of promise this year as well. They need a running back. But then on the defensive side of the ball, they've got two guys in Jeffrey Simmons who – Look at the tape. Look at the stats. Jeffrey Simmons is the best defensive tackle in the NFL. He had the best season this past season. He's single-handedly why our defense was even in a lot of the games that we were in. And then we've got T'Vondre Sweat, who's one of the biggest players and one of the most talented players, defensive tackles in the NFL. Who those guys are training together. Jeffrey Simmons just forced T'Vondre Sweat to train with him in the offseason. He's bringing him down to Dallas and going to make him learn under Jeff. So you've got an awesome scenario on the defensive line. And yes, they need to add a lot of components. You could maybe keep Tony Pollard for another year, although I say, guys like L'Jarius Sneed, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, sorry, thank you for your contribution. This was a failed experiment. We'd like to start fresh. And luckily, the Titans have the second highest available cap space of any team in the NFL. And they've got a brand new stadium being put in. Nashville's an awesome city to be in. There's no state income tax. Like there's a lot to be desired. There's a lot to be desired in Nashville for sure. And if we could get a guy who's got a history of winning again, kind of like I said with the Falcons, we've got good pieces and could change. If we could get a guy who could change the culture, that could, a lot could change really, really quickly. We could have like a Dan Quinn in Washington, glow up scenario overnight. So that's the Titans. I'll get more back to them in a bit, of course. And then number 4, I'm going to go with the New York Giants. Now, the New York Giants is interesting. There's a lot of people who believe this is the best job available, and I kind of don't really understand why. It's let me pull this up here real quick because it's kind of a cursed franchise. Like, you've got Jackson Dart looked pretty decent. Um, he looked pretty decent this year. He showed a lot of promise. He could be, he could be a stud, but I still feel like he has a lot left to prove. And then Cam Scatterbo looked freaking awesome, but he's coming back from a nasty injury. That's not guaranteed either. Like, I just feel like in New York, they still have a lot to prove. And then also, where's Abdul Carter? What happened to what was he, the number 3 overall pick this year? How is nobody talking about Abdul Carter? I've heard a lot of people criticizing Cam Ward, like, oh, this is a number 1 overall pick. I haven't heard anybody criticizing Abdul Carter. What happened to that guy? So, and yeah, just being in New York, besides the Bills, I would not want to be a part of, a New York franchise, the Giants or the Jets. I'd stay a million miles away from if I was the head coach. But that being said, they do have some pieces. Malik Neighbors coming back. He could be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But again, he's coming off of a nasty injury. He's already had some injury trouble since he's been in the NFL. That's kind of a roll of the dice. You could win really, really big if you join the Giants, or you could totally lose out and it could be an absolute dumpster fire. So that's why they're 4th on my list, where a lot of people have them, as a number 1 or number 2 job. Number 5, I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I could say the same thing about Pittsburgh as I said with the Ravens, where they have a history of winning. That, in fact, I think besides the Packers, we could fact check this, but I think that the Steelers have like a top 1 or top 2 or 3 all-time franchise winning percentage. They're studs. They're always over 500. They're almost always in the playoffs. They just can't get past that next hump. They've got a history of winning Super Bowls in the past, so that's a very functional franchise. But you got a lot of work to do. You look at the leaders of that offense right now, or the leaders of that team in general. When I think of the leaders of that team, you've got Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, Jalen Ramsey, Cam Hayward. I'm like, are those 4 pieces? Those are kind of your 4 big pillars. Are those guys going to be in Pittsburgh next year? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's another coin flip. So you've got an awesome organization, a ton of support, a very, very good fan base, but the talent on the roster just makes me a little bit skeptical. Next piece, I'm going to go number 6 with the Raiders. Again, this is another head coach opening that a lot of people are really high on, and I kind of don't understand why. It's similar to New York, where you've got 3 really awesome components. You've got Ashton Genty, which some people thought that he struggled in his rookie season. He quietly had a really, really good season for the tools that were given. Like, I want to say I saw a stat where it was like 80% of his attempts, he got touched like at or behind the line of scrimmage or something crazy like that this year. Like, he had no help around him. So you got Ashton Genty. I think he's got a promising future. Brock Bowers, who could be the best, the best tight end in the entire NFL and one of the best receiving options, tight end or wide receiver in the entire NFL. I really am a big believer in Brock Bowers. And then you've got Max Crosby on the defensive side of the ball, which Max Crosby not only that dude is a game wrecker. He disrupts every single play that he is on the field. He is a disruptor, so I love to see that. And from a coaching standpoint, you're like, all right, if I'm a Dan Campbell from a couple years ago, or a Ben Johnson, or a Mike McDonald, the D'Amico Ryans, like one of these culture builders that we've seen had some success, a couple years ago. If I'm looking around the league and I see a guy like Max Crosby is on my roster, I'm thinking, this is an advocate that I could make into one of my guys who I could really get him to buy into my process, and he could have a ton of influence and infect the locker room with what I'm trying to do. That's from a head coaching standpoint. That's at least how I like to look at it. I think the biggest glaring weakness of the Raiders is one, they have not been an organized or decent franchise at all in recent years. And I actually think that the move to Vegas was a massive mistake. I'm not saying I think that they should have stayed in Oakland. I know there was a ton of reasons to leave Oakland. I just think Vegas is a huge problem, and it's going to become more and more a problem the longer they are there. Because I don't know if you guys watch any Raiders games this year. It seems like every game that the Raiders play is an away game. And what I mean by that is obviously when you play on the road, there's a way. But when you're playing at home, Vegas is such a tourist destination where, oh my gosh, my favorite team is going to go play the Raiders this next week. And my favorite team is playing on Sunday and I turn, my 40th birthday is on Saturday. So we're going to do a Vegas trip and I'm going to, party all weekend and get to see my favorite team play on Sunday, blah, blah, blah. Fans from teams outside of Vegas are using it as a tourist destination. And I think it was one of the Broncos at Vegas game this year, which Broncos fans are loud and Broncos fans travel big time. Like Broncos fans are solid. That being said, though, I remember watching the Broncos score on Vegas in Vegas, and the crowd went nuts. So imagine being the head coach and this being your team, and your opponent scores and your stadium is rocking for the opposing because you have so many people traveling in from out of town. So I think that's something that is a huge problem with Vegas. Their stadium is really nice. They don't have a local Vegas fan base. I don't know the population of Vegas. I don't know how many of them are Raiders fans necessarily. Maybe that will change over time. I just feel like fans across the league are learning I could see my favorite team in their city, or I could see my favorite team when they play against Vegas. And you could say the same about Nashville to a certain extent. You could say that about LA. You could say that about some cities, Miami. It's so bad. It feels like every game is an away game as the Raiders, and that would really, really turn me off. So then again, you start winning, everything could change. And then 7, 8, 9, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on, but in order, I've got Dolphins, Browns, and Cardinals. I have these in the same category. Dolphins, I only have Dolphins ranked above them because I just think it'd be awesome to play in Miami. Like I think if you're an NFL or an NBA player, I don't think that there's a better spot that you could play in than Miami. It'd just be so dope. You got palm trees and good weather and the beach and girls and stuff to do. I mean, that'd be so gangster if you're if you're a pro athlete. So I'd like to see the Dolphins. They've got A-Chain. I'm trying to even think they got Jalen Waddle they could build around. But these last three, the Dolphins, Browns, and Cardinals, feel like a complete rebuild. The Browns feel like the only piece that they're going to keep is Myles Garrett, and then they committed to him, and who knows how long he's going to want to stay there. And then the Cardinals, kind of similarly, you've got Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, who do the Cardinals even have? I mean, the Cardinals feel like a complete reset, complete start over. Get rid of Kyler Murray, clean house with the entire coaching staff. Get rid of your GM, get rid of everybody, and start fresh. And that's why they're at the bottom. I feel like the rest of these job openings, there's at least pieces you can work around. The Dolphins, the Browns, and the Cardinals kind of feel like there's not a lot that you can build around there, unfortunately, and all kind of franchises that don't have a history of being able to win a Super Bowl, unfortunately. So that being said, let's go through who I think could be the best fit. If I could wave a magic wand, if I could play God here and I could pick which head coach ends up where, I'm going to go through this and tell you why. Let's start at the top. We're going to go with, and you know what, I'll just go in the same order here. So the Ravens, my number one pick for the Ravens. They moved away from John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh is the model of consistency and discipline and mindset and integrity and stuff like that. They moved away from him. They want a fresh start. What a better fresh start than Mike McDaniel? You've got an offensive guru. You've already got leaders in Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. You've got pieces on this team of guys who can kind of lead internally. That was Mike McDaniel's biggest criticism is he's, a phenomenal play caller, phenomenal coordinator, but just can't really lead to that level. I'd love to see it. Let's get Mike McDaniel in here and change the entire culture up. That would be absolutely phenomenal. So starting there, we're going to go Ravens, Mike McDaniel. Falcons, I'm going to go with Kevin Stefanski. Bring some consistency. He would know how to write up an offense for the weapons that they have. He's got, good discipline. And the biggest thing about Kevin Stefanski is he comes from the AFC North. He knows how important these, interdivisional rivalries are. I think he would find a way to get an edge on, who's he competing with anymore? Competing with the Panthers, the 8-9 Panthers in the playoffs, getting a home game. Kevin Stefanski comes in. It doesn't matter, honestly. I don't think who's at quarterback. He finds a way to win that division. Next, moving on there to the Titans. I'm going to say the Titans, again, people are going to call me a homer. I'm going to say John Harbaugh. I think if you want to pay back the Ravens, again, I don't know how that exit went, but we have had the pipeline of Titans to Baltimore with Steve McNair, Derrick Henry, to name a few, Derek Mason. There's a little AFC rivalry that exists between the Ravens and the Titans, and I think John Harbaugh could have a fresh start and see Cam Ward to get excited and reinvigorated, and teach this organization how to win. Mike Borgonzi has a ton of respect in the NFL for his time with the Chiefs, and he's interviewing literally everybody. I think he's requested or has already had interviews scheduled with like 18 different candidates. It's insanity. So I think John Harbaugh, I think he's going to like the reset there in Tennessee. Giants, I would love to see the Giants hire Jesse Minter from the Chargers. The only reason why I say that is because anytime you see Jesse Minter has been requested for an interview, all the comments on social media or Twitter or whatever are all Chargers fans saying, no, stay away from Jesse. Keep your paws off of him. That means he's doing something really, really right, really, really well there. If he's won over the Harbaugh folks and the Chargers fan base, I think Minter's got a bright future as a head coach. And we've proven with, let me think here, with Mike McDonald, with D'Amico Ryans. I'm definitely blanking on a couple right now. Mike Vrabel. There are certain defensive-minded coaches who have been hired in the last year or two that are having a lot of success. So I like Jesse Minter going to New York. For the Steelers, I actually don't have one for the Steelers because that news just broke so recently. I'm going to throw this out there. Let's go with, you know what? I'm going to change this up. I'm changing my list. For the Steelers, I'm going to go with Chris Shula. Because you know what? Screw it. Shula, he's got that name. He's been picking up a lot of traction as a really attractive head coaching option, defensive minded coach. For the Steelers, he's somebody who could bring in that kind of same Tomlin discipline, but just a fresh start and a fresh feel. So for the Steelers, we're going Chris Shula. For the Raiders, let's see here. Raiders, I'm sorry, Raiders fans. I just feel like this is what's going to happen is the Raiders are going to want somebody with head coaching experience. They're going to want somebody who's like a disciplined, leader of men type guy, and they're just going to make the wrong pick, and they're going to go with Vance Joseph. And I'm sorry, that just feels like a Raiders hire. They're going to hire Vance Joseph, and it's not going to be good. For the Dolphins, I originally actually thought about the Dolphins taking Chris Shula for the same reason that I said about the Ravens, where they just need a fresh start, something completely different. But now that I think about it, the Dolphins didn't fire Mike McDaniel because of his coaching ability or his schemes. They fired him because of his leadership ability. You know who would plug in really, really well there in Miami would be Brian Daboll. Great offensive mind, but is a leader of men and is a guy's guy. He's a locker room type guy. So I'm gonna switch that up. I'm gonna go with the Dolphins are picking up Brian Daboll. That'd be sick. The Browns now. The Browns, I think, are also, they moved away from Stefanski. They're probably going to want to try to, get somebody new, get some new fresh blood in there, totally change up, and disrupt what they had been going, what they had been given before. We're going to go with Cliff Kingsbury for the Browns. I think that'll probably end catastrophically. It won't be very good because the Browns are a cursed franchise. But Cliff Kingsbury in Cleveland could be really fun. Seeing him work with Shadur Sanders would be a lot of fun, or whoever the hell they end up. Maybe Deshaun Watson. I don't know. Cliff Kingsbury, he's getting kind of a bad rap this year in Washington because they had so many injuries and they had such bad luck in Washington. But he actually did a really, really good job with Jaden Daniels the year prior. So I think, yeah. So I think that would be an awesome fit in Cleveland. And then last but not least, last but actually kind of least, the Cardinals. Cardinals need a leader of men. Cardinals need somebody with really good connections because they are going to fire their entire coaching staff, like I said, because they're going through a rebuild. And they want somebody connected to the Kyle Shanahan tree, so they're going to go with Robert Saleh. I like Robert Saleh a lot in Arizona. He's somebody who could come in, establish a culture, and build a vision for the future of this franchise. It's exactly what the Cardinals need. And who knows, the rebuild could happen a lot quicker if they pick up one of these guys, if they pick up Robert Saleh or a guy like that. So I've spent a little too much time on that. So I'm gonna speed run through. I want you guys to know, if you're listening to this and you're a fan of one of these teams and you got offended, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna say from a Titans fan, from somebody who has an open, a head coaching vacancy, this is my short list of people that I'm excited about: John Harbaugh, Robert Saleh, Mike McDaniel, Kevin Stefanski, and Cliff Kingsbury. I think those are all guys that would fit our personal system well. The same things that I just said about Cliff Kingsbury going to the Browns. I think that he could do in Tennessee. He could work with a young guy like Cam Ward. That's a guy that on my list was kind of like teetering on because he's had head coaching experience and it hasn't exactly gone the best. But those are the people that I'm like, all right, if we hired any of those five guys, Harbaugh, Saleh, McDaniel, Kingsbury, and Stefanski, I'm going to be very pleased with the direction that the Titans are headed in. Other guys that I would be happy about but not over the moon about would be Daboll, Minter, Jesse Minter, and Chris Shula. I think that those would be three kind of risks or roll the dice. They're all pretty similar in my opinion, but I think that those are three that I wouldn't hate if they ended up doing that. That being said, that's why I said earlier, this is not an official prediction. This is more so of just who I want to have land. Because if I were to make an official prediction, the Titans are going to hire one of two guys, and it's going to be depressing. And I promise, I can't promise. I'm promised that I won't hurt myself or others when they announce this. But they're going to hire either Matt Nagy or Mike McCarthy, and that's what's going to happen. They're going to hire one of these guys, and it's going to be absolutely embarrassing, and I'm going to be super sad. They interviewed Jason Garrett this week, you guys. What are we doing? I mean, granted, a lot of the guys that that Mike Bergonzi has been interviewing, he could be interviewing for coordinator positions as well. Pretty much everything has been covered as if he's interviewing all these guys for a head coaching opportunity. I think we could be interviewing, for example, we could be interviewing like a Robert Saleh after the playoffs are over as a head coaching opportunity with Mike McDaniel as our offensive coordinator, because the Titans are going to want to rebuild. So anyway, so if I said any of those names, Harbaugh, Saleh, McDaniel, Kingsbury, Stefanski, don't take offense. I think any of those guys would be a phenomenal hire. If I didn't say any of those guys, sorry, that might be what I think about your organization. But we'll definitely see. So a lot to be excited about in the NFL playoffs. I mean, man, we have. Let me just pull this up real quick. I should have had this ready. NFL playoff bracket. Let's see where we're at. Just going over these matchups because we've got a lot to be excited about. So easily the matchup that I'm the most excited for is the Broncos and Bills. That's going to be sick. The Texans and the Patriots. Just to protect my own little heart, I am going to be rooting for the Texans. I'm going to say that I can't watch Mike Vrabel win a Super Bowl. It'll absolutely kill me. Then NFC, you've got Seahawks and 49ers, and then you've got the Bears and the Rams. I think the Bears are my team that I'm rooting for moving forward, which means they're probably going to lose to the Rams. But yeah, NFL playoffs. I can't remember a time when the NFL playoffs was this wide open. There's no clear cut best team. Tons of competition. The teams that are out of the playoffs now, you've got a huge coaching carousel going on. What a time to be a fan of the NFL. I mean, come on, guys. This is good football. This is what everybody should want. So, changing from the NFL to college football quick. Yeah, we've got Indiana versus Miami on Monday. And my goodness, I mean, I keep waiting for Indiana's magic to run out. I suspected, I thought that their magic could run out against Oregon, just because they're a very well coached, really fast football team, and they just shit pumped. They shit pumped the Ducks. It was insanity. Yeah, I can't believe it. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I think Indiana probably wins that game. I would love it if Miami won, just because nobody wanted them in the playoffs to begin with, and that'd be really fun for the offseason. As they're trying to restructure and reformat the playoff every year. I think that'd be really fun to have a team that had two losses that people thought shouldn't even make it win it all and beat Indiana. But I think Indiana is the best. Have an argument for the best college football team I've ever witnessed. Kurt Cignetti, I know everybody keeps saying this, but there's never been a coach who has turned around a program in any sport at any level this quickly, and this has been this dominant. I think that this is the best team. It's the best coached team and just the best overall team that I have seen since the 2019 LSU team with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and those guys who dominated everybody. I wish we had a time machine so we could watch those two teams play, because I don't know who would win. And I've always said that I thought 2019 LSU is the best college football team of all time. So yeah, we got an exciting national championship coming up. And then from a Husker standpoint, we had Dylan Raiola officially transferred to Nebraska. I'm kind of at the same spot I was with Scott Frost when he got his job at UCF, where it's like good riddance, to a certain extent, but also like I'm rooting for you. Wish the best. I don't like that Dylan Raiola didn't give any shout out to Nebraska fans. He should have said something. He should have said thank you. Like, we wanted to crown him so badly. We wanted to make him the guy in Lincoln, Nebraska, and people showed up for him, nonstop, every single week. And then he did okay. He wasn't the second coming of Christ like everybody promised he was going to be. So I also heard that once Dylan entered the transfer portal, there was zero effort from anybody on the coaching staff or recruiting or any players that tried to keep Dylan Raiola. So that tells you something. Who knows what Dante Moore is going to do in Oregon? Who knows if Dylan Raiola is going to play or if he's going to be a backup in Oregon? I don't really see it ending well for him. I could be dead wrong about that, but Oregon's known for their speed. They're known for being fast, and Dylan can't move, and especially coming off of a leg injury, a broken bone. I don't know. Good for him. He probably got paid and he had a cool photo shoot. Is this going to do anything for his career? I don't know. I think it just goes to show that, going back to what I was saying about Indiana, 4-star, 5-star recruits or huddle or 247 profiles don't really fucking mean anything in college football. I mean, they mean something, but they don't really mean anything. If you can't develop and you can't continue to grow and get better like Indiana has done with their roster full of 2- and 3-star guys from JMU, it doesn't matter if you're a 5-star guy and you're playing for Oregon. You got to get better and you got to go outside of your comfort zone. You got to sling the football. So we'll see if Dylan can do that. I don't anticipate he will, but I could be proven wrong. Last couple things. This is very, very brief. Just wanted to put this out here. Terrence Crawford retired from boxing. I think that this is a legit retirement. I don't think he has anything left to prove. I've been saying this since he beat up Earl Spence, but Terrence Crawford's the greatest boxer of all time. That's it. Plain and simple. He's undefeated. There's never been an offensive powerhouse like Terrence Crawford who's gone undefeated. You think of the other great undefeated people in the GOAT conversation, mainly being Floyd Mayweather or, Muhammad Ali, who's not undefeated, but in the GOAT conversation, they're known for their head movement, their defense. Muhammad Ali known for his incredible footwork. Terrence Crawford is just a surgeon. He's a tactician. He picks people apart and he's got punching power that is not human. So I'm going to go ahead and crown him the GOAT of boxing. He has an awesome argument, and I still get choked up when I rewatch that Canelo fight. I think I've rewatched it 2 or 3 times now. And at the end, when you hear, and the fighting pride of Omaha, Terrence Crawford. I mean, it sends me into a tizzy. I can't believe the greatest boxer of all times from my city, from my state. Love you, Terrence Crawford. That's amazing. So I got that piece. And then the very last piece is I won my fantasy football league this year. That was pretty cool. I had a pretty strong feeling I was going to win this fantasy football league in general. I had 3 fantasy football leagues. One of them I was probably the worst team in. Another one, I scored the most points in the league and missed the playoffs, which I didn't even think was possible. I think we're going to change the rules of that league because of that. And then the other one, I scored the most points in, and I actually won my league. Let me pull up my team for you guys, put you on a little bit of game here. I mean, how can this team lose? I had Matthew Stafford at quarterback, Derrick Henry, James Cook, A.J. Brown, George Pickens, Tyler Warren, Chase Brown, and Brandon Aubrey. I mean, I've got Derrick Henry's one of the best. James Cook, that's top 5 running backs at, each of those. George Pickens went on an insane run. A.J. Brown was kind of spotty. Tyler Warren's one of the best, tight ends. Chase Brown, shout out, Jordan. Appreciate you, bro. I traded for him right at the perfect time. He ended up popping off. Stafford's one of the best quarterbacks, and then Brandon Aubrey was probably my favorite player on my fantasy team. So, it is what it is. I had to be in 3 fantasy leagues to win 1. That's how it goes. I made my money back plus a little bit more this year for all 3 leagues across the board, and I'm excited for another one. I might have to. If there's a way that I could drill this down and just be in maybe 1, maybe 2 fantasy football leagues. Now 3 is too. More than 2 is too many. If you guys have been in 2+ fantasy football leagues ever, you guys know it's a nightmare. You can't remember who's on your team. You're having, conflicts of interest where you're rooting for one guy on your team in this league and then you're playing against him in another league. It's a shit show. So I'm going to have to find a way to narrow this down to 1 or 2 fantasy leagues, or maybe no fantasy football leagues. And maybe I just win this year and ride off into the sunset. Who knows? We'll see. But other than that, please share my show. Please continue to comment. Let me know what feedback you guys have. If I missed anything, if there's anything else that you think is a good opportunity to talk about, shoot me a message, comment, post it, whatever. So find a way to communicate that with me somehow. That'd be phenomenal. So that's all I got to say. I love you all. Thanks for tuning in week in and week out. And God bless football.